Political news. Senator Bernie Sanders announcing just moments ago that he's running for president again. Breaking political news. Senator Bernie News alerts. Thanks for watching. That breaking political news. Senator Bernie Sanders announcing just moments ago that he's running for president again. His challenge to Hillary Clinton fell short in 2016, and the field for the Democratic nomination much more crowded this time around. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran has the latest. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back.
Moments ago that he's running for president again. His challenge to Hillary Clinton fell short in 2016, and the field for the Democratic nomination much more crowded this time around. Our senior national Terry Moran has the latest. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back. And you'll remember, George, the last time Bernie Sanders ran for president, when he announced, hardly anybody noticed. And then he ignited that astonishing grassroots movement that made him the most unlikely political rock star and changed the Democratic Party, shifting it decisively leftward. But now the question is, at 77 years old, can Bernie bottle that lightning again? This morning, Senator Bernie Sanders is This morning, Senator Bernie Sanders is making it official.
Together, you and I and our 2016 campaign began the political revolution. Now it is time to complete that revolution and implement the vision that we fought for.
Sanders sent this message to his massive list of supporters, letting them know he's getting back in the ring. His improbable run in 2016 gives him an edge in name recognition. Official.
Together, you and I and our 2016 campaign began the political revolution. Now it is time to complete that revolution and implement the vision that we fought for.
To his massive list of supporters, letting them know he's getting back in the ring. His improbable run in 2016 gives him an edge in name recognition for 2020. He started that race as a little-known independent senator from Vermont.
I know that if I do this, I start off as a significant underdog.
But his progressive platform, universal Medicare for all health care, free tuition at state colleges and universities, $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, caught fire as thousands flocked to his rallies hoping to feel the burn.
Welcome to the political revolution.
Sanders struggled to win African-American voters in states like South Carolina, and he ultimately conceded to Hillary Clinton at the Democratic National Convention.
I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the
Now, Bernie Sanders begins in the ring. Now, Bernie Sanders begins this campaign dealing with an issue from the last one. Sanders has now twice apologized to women staff members who say they were harassed or mistreated during the last campaign. That's bound to come up again. But the real question for Bernie Sanders, George, of course, is having ignited this progressive movement in the Democratic Party, can he now take advantage of it, take it all the way, and win?
Yeah, because so many other candidates also have his ideas right now. Okay, Terry, thanks very much.
All right, breaking news. Thought this was going to happen at 7.
Yeah.
A little earlier, Bernie Sanders jumping back into the presidential race again. He is running officially.
I tell you what, this is Act 2.
Act 2.
And it's going to be fascinating because, as everybody remembers, 3 years ago, Bernie Sanders energized the Democratic Party. And
young people.
Energized so many young people. He had an extraordinary fundraising base online and also had an extraordinary grassroots operation. He was fighting uphill most of the time because the Democratic Party establishment was all on board with Hillary Clinton. And as some people suggested parts of the process at times appeared to be skewed towards Hillary Clinton, or others might say rigged. But Mike, it's a different year. And it was very easy. Then he was sort of like, if you ever saw The Matrix, he was like Neo against the machine. Like he was the outsider. The Democratic Party. And
young people.
Energized so many young people. You had an extraordinary fundraising base online and also had an extraordinary grassroots operation. He was fighting uphill most of the time because the Democratic Party establishment was all on board with Hillary Clinton. And as I tell you what, this is Act Two.
Act Two.
And it's going to be fascinating because, as everybody remembers, 3 years ago, Bernie Sanders. I tell you what, this is Act Two.
Act Two.
And for him in the end. So what's now you never got for him in the end. So, and which, by the way, the Republicans are now rigging the process for Donald Trump. It's always the wrong move. It's always the wrong move. Make him fight, make him scrap, make him earn the nomination, and that makes them better general election candidates. But now that lane is crowded. You've got Cory Booker, you've got Kamala Harris, you have Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, I could go on. There are 800 people that are filling up that lane. Elizabeth Warren, of course, will probably, those two will be probably fighting for the same votes more than anybody else on that list. It's going to be a different run, a tougher run for Bernie this time.
It's going to be a much
a tougher. It's going to be a different. It's going to be the next. It's going to be a different run, a tougher run for Bernie this time.
It's going to be a much tougher run for him. It's a wide and diverse and deep field. You get the anecdotal impression right now. Kamala Harris is really you get you get the anecdotal impression right now. Kamala Harris is really on the verge of breaking out a little more than any of the other candidates. I think Bernie's time, sadly for Bernie and the Bernie files.
Be careful.
I would be careful. You know why?
Bernie's time, more than any of the other candidates. I think I think Bernie's time, sadly for Bernie and the Bernie files.
Be careful.
I
would be careful. You know why?
Might be in the rearview mirror.
I just wonder who temperamentally, of that group that we just saw up on the screen, who temperamentally, like it or not, whether you want to see it or not, can stand up to Trump. Because that's ultimately what Democrats are looking for, correct?
That's the bottom line,
Someone who can beat Donald Trump.
Gene, Democrats want to win. It's so funny.
I see potentially two.
We're talking about ideology right now. Let me tell you something. This will shock all of my dear friends on the left on Twitter and all of my dear friends on the right on Twitter. But ideology, at the end of the day, just doesn't matter. It reminds me of the Mike Tyson quote that I think the president even said to
mentally, like it or not, whether you want to see it or not, can stand up to Trump. Because that's ultimately what Democrats are looking for, correct?
That's the bottom line.
Someone who can beat Donald Trump.
Democrats want to win. It's so funny.
I see potentially two.
We're talking about ideology right now. Let me tell you something. This will shock all my dear friends on the left on Twitter, all my dear friends on the right on Twitter. But ideology, at the end of the day, just doesn't matter. It reminds me of Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. Well, everybody cares about ideology until the first time that candidate grabs a microphone, starts talking, and she or he owns the room. Then forget about ideology. It becomes about leadership. Maybe that's Bernie's path. microphone, starts talking until the first time that can plan until they get hit in the face. Well, everybody cares about ideology until the first time that candidate grabs a microphone, starts talking, and she or he owns the room. Then forget about ideology. It becomes about leadership. Maybe that's Bernie's path.
Maybe. Look, Bernie comes in with a base. I mean, he already has a base. He's run nationwide. He's got people out there in every state who are going to be back on the Bernie train. But as was said, this is a much different year. And what I think Democrats are looking for is somebody who can be Donald Trump. And of these many candidates, of this multitude, a few are going to stand out. They're going to capture the imagination. Some haven't gotten in yet, who I think could be major players this time. And we will see year. And what I think Democrats are looking for back on the Bernie train, but as was said, this is a much different year, and what I think Democrats are looking for is somebody who can beat Donald Trump, and of these many candidates, of this multitude, a few are going to capture the imagination. Some haven't gotten in yet, who I think could be major players this time, and we'll see. Out and we'll see who emerges. But at this stage, I think everybody jump in and we'll see who really captures the imagination of Democrats and who looks like somebody who can not only stand up to but defeat Donald Trump. And I think voters will get a sense of that and they'll let us know what they think.
Okay, Nikki, you said you saw two.
Yeah,
we thought could stand on the stage and basically tell the President of the United States, you're a liar.
Yeah, well, and also, you want to be able to. That's hard to do.
Which two?
Right, come on, don't answer the question. We need to interview all 45 of them. So don't say those two right now.
I'm going to write them down on a piece of paper, and we're going to see how this goes. I'm going to hand it to you now, and don't open it, but they're not who you think.
The big question mark is going to be, what does Joe Biden choose to do? When does he choose to do it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's very interesting. One of the things that should be concerning Democrats is Simpson had a poll out yesterday. Joe Biden was up by 10 points, but everybody else was basically within the margin of error. And again, with Donald Trump at his worst, with these candidates just starting off at their best without being dinged up, still within the margin of error, I will be the first to admit, I thought that, and I wrote it in the Washington Post about a month ago, the Democratic nomination was going to be more important than ever before because you'd just be a step away from the Oval Office. It's not looking that way now. A month later, it's not looking that way.
I've spent years telling Democratic friends, look, part of the reason the Republican Party is in the shape it is because we were able to simply default to you screwing up. Republicans they're not going to show, they're going to have low turnout, and that's really a problem. And I think in some ways the Democrats are risking replicating what the Republicans did the last time around. You have 20 candidates, some of whom are instant no-hopers. Personally, as a former resident of Senator Sanders' estate, another Bernie Sanders candidacy to me is an answer to a question nobody's asking. He served a very important role in 2016 to say, this is a real primary, the election isn't rigged. If you want someone who's more exciting than Hillary Clinton, I'm that person. There are plenty of exciting people running this way. So I think, at some point, I'm a little more optimistic than you are, Joe, because I think this will get itself sorted out. That right now people are expressing preferences and excitement. That's going to coalesce, but I don't know who it's going to coalesce around. I don't know who the names are.
What's interesting is, though, is that Bernie, again, it was
who the names are on Mika's
put them in the
paper.
bottom of my purse.
What's interesting is, though, is that Bernie, again, was a guy that after the election was over, you had people saying that voted for Donald Trump, well, I would have voted for Bernie.
That's correct.
If
it hadn't been rigged against him for the DNC
nominee, which again proves it's like those people who voted for Obama 2 times, George W. Bush 2 times, and then voted for Donald Trump. It's not about ideology, and Bernie does speak to a lot of disaffected people, especially across the upper Midwest. Let me see.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to announce it.
No. Okay, so interesting, right? Okay, so before we go to break, because we'll continue this conversation. Here is no.
That's a threat.
Right.
Alex, don't scream at her. That's what she
Teasing
was
the
going to say.
pre-bubble.
We're going to continue this.
Once again, Senator Bernie Sanders announced his Once again, Senator Bernie Sanders announced he's running for president. Watch.
It is absolutely.
Once again, Senator Bernie Sanders announced he's running for president. Watch.
It is true.
Bernie claims that all of the issues he pushed about health care and taxes that were considered so radical during the last campaign have now gained mainstream acceptance. Is he right? Somebody's wrong about that.
actually.
No.
Maybe this is. I actually wish that Trump went against Bernie Sanders. I think that would have been a far more interesting race because the country was sort of leading towards this movement. I don't know. I don't think he's wrong about that. I think the left has really moved more in his direction than the moderate lane.
Oh my God! I think the silver lining about this is we get Larry David back on Saturday Night Live.
We do. That's right.
Look, I think the problem he has though is that whereas he had the progressive.
I don't think he's wrong about that, actually.
No.
Maybe this is. I actually wish that Trump went against Bernie Sanders. I think that would have been a far more interesting race because the country was sort of leading towards this movement. I don't know. I don't think he's wrong about that. I think the left has really moved more in his direction than the moderate lane.
Oh my God! I think the silver lining is Larry David. Live.
We do. That's right.
Look, I think the problem he has though is that whereas he had the progressive lane almost all to himself, or really all to himself, 4 years ago, this time it is a very crowded progressive field. A lot of people eating out of the same pie.
Well, there are 12 Democrats that have announced running. I think we'll still hear from some more. I don't know. Is he not? I don't know. Is he now going to be the spoiler? I mean, Joe Biden hasn't announced yet. I suspect that he will. I'm just not sure. And to your point, Anna, yeah, he was sort of the progressive. I don't know that, policies like raising the minimum wage, universal health care, I don't know that those are really that left. I think when you poll the American,
they want it.
Yeah, when you poll Americans, they want that, and I too think that health care should be a right. I think when you get ill, you need to be taken care of. Don't we want that in our society? We're actually one of the only countries that don't have something like that. Point, Anna, yeah, he was sort of the progressive. I don't know that, policies like raising the minimum wage, sort of the progressive. I don't know that, whatever is progressive. I don't know that, policies like raising the minimum wage, policies like raising the it's not so progressive. I think it's just human.
The thing I will say about him is don't underestimate him.
I think
the thing I will say about him is don't underestimate him. I mean, he got 60% New Hampshire in 2016, 49% in Iowa. This time, there are no superdelegates to come against him at the convention like what happened before. The DNC that we know of so far isn't petitioning against him. Like there was a huge scandal with Debbie Wasserman Schultz that they seemed in the tank for Hillary Clinton. So he already has that going for him. My favorite game that I like to play, or one of them, is hypothetical. For him, my favorite game that I like to play, or one of them, is hypothetical election scenarios. And one of the things I did over the weekend is I thought that there was actually a conversation with my husband. There's actually a scenario where Bernie Sanders could take New Hampshire and Iowa, and then go to South Carolina and possibly get beat by somebody like Kamala, and then go into Super Tuesday, where she's obviously from California, and she sweeps, and there's another sort of fracturing in the Democratic Party. So I think he's still the original with all the socialist disciples coming up after him. So I think he's a truly formidable candidate. I wouldn't underestimate him. He's the most powerful. He's the most popular. After him. So I think he's a truly formidable candidate. I wouldn't underestimate him. He's the most powerful. He's the most popular politician in the country.
The only problem that I think, well, Whoopi's not here, so I don't want to speak for her, but she said it over and over again. She's
not a socialist.
He's an independent, really.
That he shouldn't run as a Democrat.
He should run as a Democrat.
He's running as a Democrat, but he's an independent.
No, she said he should run as an independent, I believe.
Yeah, I mean,
or a socialist.
He ran as a Democrat in 2016, but he is an independent.
But I gotta tell you, Coffee Boy running as an independent is enough of a spoiler for me. That man is
Coffee Boy, Schultz, barista.
That guy got into the right business because you need to consume caffeine in order to be able to stay awake through him.
He did. He's done a great job, by the way,
what?
with coffee.
Oh, with coffee,
and,
yeah.
and helping all of our lives. But you know,
certainly not on this campaign.
There's no one running,
Bernie
though.
really a Democrat,
There's
though?
no one running in the Democratic side so far that's really filled that moderate lane. Amy Klobuchar, she was on CNN last night.
Kamala's not so left.
If you look at her policy, she's pretty far left when it comes to healthcare and education. She's been asked about it. But Amy Klobuchar was asked last night by some of the audience about free college tuition. And here's how she reacted to that. It did surprise me.
Yes or no? Would you support free college for all?
I am not for free four-year college for all. No. Thank you.
So let me ask you this, because
And I wish if I was a magic genie and could give that to everyone and we could afford it, I would. I'm just trying to find a mix of incentives and make sure kids that are in need, that's why I talked about expanding programs, can go to college and be able to afford it, and make sure people that can't afford it are able to pay.
Why is it when I was in college, it's $75 a term? Why is that? I went to Why is it that when I was in college, I paid $75 a term? Why is that? I went to city universities. I got a master's degree pretty much for free. Why is it that it could happen then, but it can't happen now? I don't get that.
Was it?
Are able to pay.
Why is it? It was a city university. The whole city university is expensive now. It's not the way it was.
Bad budgeting, not
And
prioritizing
also
education.
a whole scholarships, like academic scholarships. Well, scholarships are always available, but I mean, they talk about it as if it's a new idea. It's been done. Talk about it, but I mean, they talk about it as if it's some new idea. It's been done.
Thank God my parents could pay because I couldn't get a scholarship.
I don't think Amy Klobuchar can get actually to the primaries because it has moved so far left. So I said from the beginning, if a Democrat is going to be successful against Trump,
moderate though?
Yeah, I'm saying I think she would struggle getting through a primary because the primaries, it seems like, has moved. And on the Democratic side,
I do not think the Democratic Party has gone so far left. I actually think that that's sort of a Republican talking point. I think Republicans really wish that the Democratic Party moved so far left. I think the Democratic Party is a really wide umbrella and that there are people that are freshmen in the Congress that are left, but I think by and large.
This morning as well, we watch Washington, where U.S. President Donald Trump is facing another potential challenger this morning in the 2020 presidential election. Bernie Sanders has announced he will once again run for the Democratic nomination. Let's go to Lindsay Duncombe in Washington. Let's go to the nation. Let's go to Lindsay Duncombe in Washington. We were wondering whether he would join in. They now knew we hear that we're wondering where we went in Washington. And we were wondering whether he would join in this already crowded field. Tell us about his announcement, Lindsay.
You know, I think it's fitting that this is my first live report about the Democratic 2020 campaign for the nomination, because so much of what all of these candidates are talking about in the lead up to this is the kind of thing that Bernie Sanders ran on the last time. And if you look at his campaign video that came out this morning, that's what he's running on. He's running on being the guy who started to move the conversation, not just among Democrats, but in this country, to the left. That video has headlines and news clips about Medicare for all, which seemed like a radical idea 4 years ago, about free tuition, which seemed again like an incredibly radical idea, and talking about the emergency of climate change. If you look at the Democratic race right now, those kinds of conversations and policies moving in that direction are really the price of entry for being considered to be the candidate. And because Bernie Sanders is the person who put these ideas forward in that campaign in 2016, he believes he will be the right person to challenge Donald Trump in 2020. Here's more from Bernie Sanders. 2016, he believes he will be the right person to challenge Donald Trump in 2020. Here's more from Bernie Sanders.
In 2016,
So he's aware that it's a very different field of competition. We remember how he outflanked Hillary Clinton wildly on the left, but this time around, not so much.
No, the candidates all have sort of variations on a theme, and the questions are, you know, to what degree are they going to be more progressive? And the big difference you have with the candidates as they are coming out now is what Bernie Sanders cannot change, who he is, a 77-year-old white man running up against a really diverse field of candidates. Just check out the women who have declared they are running for the nomination. And if you look at what happened in the 2018 election, it was women and people of color that really got behind a lot of these progressive ideas. And there is a sense that this might be, post-Hillary Clinton, a time for a woman to take on the nomination. But certainly the other thing to consider is how it is different from running two people against each other, or three initially with Mark O'Malley in the 2016 case, to how the field shifts and changes when you have a dozen, possibly 20, going into the 2016 nomination. Imagine how different the debates will be. So there is a lot to look forward to, very familiar and very different all at the same time. And we've got a whole year of it, Heather. Woohoo, bring it on. We're looking forward to our more.
Hello, I'm Bernie Sanders, and I'm yelling for President of the United States. Hello, I'm Bernie Sanders, and I'm
different this time.
Up progressive goodies of their own. In 2016, Sanders made a show of attacking the 1% and the billion.
Let's get to the news. Senator Bernie Sanders announced today that he will run for president in 2020. If successful, if successful, he would be the oldest person. That's it. He would just be the oldest person. Bernie Sanders would be the oldest nominee put forth by a major political party. Poor Bernie. Can you imagine what the presidency would do to him? It aged Obama so much, and he was in his prime. Bernie's going to come out looking like Gollum. That's right. We all get rings. That's right. Bernie Sanders announced today that he's running for That's right. Bernie Sanders announced today that he's running for president. He was trying to just tell his family, but we all heard him. Between us, top secret, I'm running for president. That's why I'm whispering. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez last week compared President Trump's border wall to the Berlin Wall.
He is running for. Well, you guys, Bernie Sanders has announced that he is running for president. Although at age 77 years old, he isn't so much running as he's slowly wandering for president. That's right, at age 77, Bernie is the only candidate who tossed his hat and his teeth into the ring. I saw that Bernie first announced that he's running for president on Vermont Public Radio at 6:20 a.m. It was a huge shock to the three people listening to Vermont Public Radio at 6. They couldn't believe it. But within hours, his campaign raised more than. But within hours, his campaign raised more than $1 million. Bernie actually brought in so much money that he spent the rest of the day attacking himself. He's like, we need to take the money out of my campaign. Some more campaign news yesterday. Democratic candidate Kirsten Gillibrand was speaking at.
And we're going to begin tonight with an expanding field and a growing debate. Today, Bernie Sanders said he is in for 2020. He becomes the 10th candidate in the Democratic field. Sanders, who challenged Hillary Clinton in 2016, is the only candidate calling himself a Democratic socialist. And his entry stirs new discussion about whether the country is heading his way or the other. Here's Nancy Cordes.
What's going to be different this time?
In an interview with John In an interview with John Dickerson and a video online, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said he's picking up where he left off 3 years ago.
Revolutions do not happen overnight.
Within 4 hours, he had already raised $1 million. A reminder of the progressive groundswell that drove him to 23 caucus and primary victories in 2016.
I'm talking about
picking up where he said he's picking up where he left off 3 years ago.
Revolutions do not happen overnight.
I'm talking about a huge
Sanders argues the party has been moving his way ever since.
All of those ideas, people say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical. We should move. Medicare for all, all of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mission. And a majority of the American people now support him.
Like Hillary Clinton then, his more moderate opponents now think some of his plans, like free four-year college for all, are a pipe dream.
I wish if I was a magic genie and could give that to everyone and we could afford it, I would.
And Republicans are sure to cite his bid as another sign the party is lurching to the left.
We are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country.
That was the State of the Union. Today, the president showed a soft spot for Sanders.
Personally, I think he missed his time, but I like Bernie because he is one person that, on trade, he sort of would agree on trade.
Sanders' view of Mr. Trump.
This guy is a pathological liar.
Hasn't changed.
We have a president who is a pathological liar.
Sanders is 77, but told Dickerson that should not be an issue. And he noted that some 90-year-olds have more energy, Jeff, than people half their age.
Oh, okay, Nancy Cordes, thank you very much.
We spoke to Senator Sanders, the latest candidate to join the 2020 Democratic presidential race.
Well, those are good questions, John.
Yeah. Well, and we had a lot more, which will be online, about Amazon. You know, he supports those who are and so there's a lot more that will be online of that interview. So
at CBSThisMorning.com, you can see all of that.
That's exactly right.
To be clear, he is up for the challenge. Don't age. As many people say, age is just a number.
That's right.
Age is just a number.
And he certainly is out there campaigning quite a lot. He also we also talk about the 25th Amendment. So we also talk quite a lot. Of that interview. So
at CBSThisMorning.com, you can see all of that.
That's exactly right.
To be clear, he is up for the challenge.
Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, is back, and he is launching a sequel to his 2016 presidential campaign. The senator announced his 2020 news early this morning in an email to supporters, along with this video message.
Hi, I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president. We are running against a president who is a pathological liar, a fraud, a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, and someone who is undermining American democracy as he leads us in an authoritarian direction. I am running for president because now more than ever, we need leadership that brings us together, not divides us.
Shortly after the news broke, the 77
divides us up.
Shortly after the news broke, the 77-year-old senator appeared on CBS News and was asked why this time would be different than the last ones, as we said. Of 10 Democratic candidates.
That's what's different.
Sanders now joins an already crowded and diverse field of 10 Democratic candidates. That number will probably grow some more. That's something he clearly didn't face in 2016. A majority of Democrats already seeking the nomination have fanned out across the country, touting popular progressive messages like universal health care, raising the minimum wage, and combating climate change. Sanders running second in the polls right now behind Joe running second in the polls. Sanders climate change. Sanders running second in the polls right now behind Joe Biden remains a force to be reckoned with, though. Within hours of his announcement, he raised more than $3 million from donors. For more, I'm joined by from donors. For more, I'm joined by Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, former New York Congressman Joe Crowley, and Ben Jealous, former National President and CEO of the NAACP. He was a supporter of Bernie Sanders back in 2016. Curious if he's on board for the second one. And well, I start with that. Ben Jealous. I remember talking to you in 2016. You were one of his surrogates. That's the word we use. Are you going to be a Sanders supporter in 2020?
You know, I signed up in New Hampshire in 2016. This year, I ran for governor of our state, and as the standard bearer for our party in our state, in that respect, I've got to look and see, to endorse when we get close to the Maryland primary. We want to make sure that Maryland matters. With that said, as you know, I'm a good friend. I'm a big fan of Bernie, and he's going to be a real force. He's exactly where the voters are. He's going to be a real fan of Bernie, and he's going to be a real force. He's exactly where the voters are on health, on education, on jobs, and he's showing that he can raise real money and, frankly, do it from the people of the country in probably the smallest denominations of anybody. So I think everybody should take it very, very seriously this time.
All right. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of help from some of his rivals in your own campaign. That might, you want to be gracious about that, at least. So no endorsement right now.
I mean, look, Corey and I go back. We're both Black Rose Scholars. We go back a long way. Kamala I've known for 15 years. Liz Warren and I fought to pass the CFPB together. Great friends, great friends. But we have to right now. When you look at Bernie rolling out, he is absolutely formidable, and it starts with his Bernie rolling out. He is. But we have to, right now, when you look at Bernie rolling out, he is absolutely formidable, and it starts with his message. What makes Bernie unique is that he has been courageous on these issues for a very long time, and quite frankly, you've seen, I think, candidates across the party move towards him. He clearly is where the voters are.
All right, well, Susan, let me ask you one of the questions I've got with Sanders is being debated right now. Is like in 2016, he was the only alternative for most of those primaries to Hillary Clinton. Anybody who didn't want Hillary Clinton got to vote for Bernie Sanders. So you probably got a lot of folks who maybe didn't like him particularly. They just didn't like Hillary Clinton. So the conventional wisdom is, hey, crowded field, a lot of other choices in 2020, that works against him. The other way I look at that, though, is crowded field 2016, look at the Republican race. Donald Trump could win primaries with 30% of the vote, 35% of the vote. Can Sanders turn around and do that in the Democratic race?
Well, it's possible, and he starts out with a base of support.
Democratic race.
Well, it's possible, and he starts out with a base of support. He starts out with phenomenal fundraising ability. But, one thing that strikes me, Republicans often choose the person who came in second in the previous election. You got a lot of examples of that. I was trying to think today of examples of Democrats who came in second for the nomination who got it then the next time around. And the only one I could think of is Hillary Clinton, because I think Democrats like to fall in love with somebody new, and that is not going to be Bernie Sanders this time. This is going to be one of the 10 other people who have not run for office before, who are a generation younger than Bernie Sanders, and who espouse examples of that. I was trying to think today of examples of Democrats often choose the person who came in second in the previous election. You got a lot of examples of that. I was trying to think today of examples of Democrats who came in second for the nomination who got it then the next time around. And the only one I can think of is Hillary Clinton, because I think Hillary Clinton, because I think Democrats like to fall in love with somebody new, and that is not going to be Bernie Sanders this time. This is going to be one of the 10 other people who have not run for office before, who are a generation younger than Bernie Sanders, and who espouse pretty similar political views.
Well, yeah, Joe Crowley.
I think it's kind of creative to make Bernie the Clinton in this race. I mean, I would just point that out. That's a stretch.
Well, let me take Joe Crowley's temperature on this, because it seems, certainly in 2016 we saw this. There was a lot of reluctance, at the very least, on what the part of what you would call the Democratic establishment to support the Sanders campaign. How much reluctance, or even if the words, how much resistance is there going to be from those same quarters towards him in 2020?
Well, Steve, I have news for you tonight. Bernie Sanders is running for president of the United States.
How much resistance is there going to be from those same quarters towards him in 2020?
Well, Steve, I have news for you tonight. Bernie Sanders is running for president of the United States. Bernie's been running ever since he lost, and there's no doubt about that. I do think there was a great deal of resistance. Obviously, I think the relationship that Clinton had built, certainly in New York, as the senator from New York, those relationships were there. But as the First Lady, and again as the former Secretary of State, there had been a lot of touch to the Clintons, certainly that benefited her. But Bernie is formidable. There's no question about it. Bernie has. Bernie is formidable. There's no question about it. Bernie has you saw with the numbers that he's raised just in a few hours, the millions of dollars of grassroots that he has out there. I think maybe even more so with all these Democrats running, it kind of is going to stand out that Bernie is still an independent. Engaged in a Democratic primary. And I do think there are some new faces here that when they get more exposure, I think that may drown out a bit of the Bernie effect.
Is he somebody?
Exposure, I think that may drown out a bit of the Bernie effect.
Is he somebody you could support?
Look, I could support. I disagree with Bernie on a number of issues, but overall, the core values that Bernie has are similar to my core values. So yes, I could. I do think, though, that I think it's interesting that Ben has mentioned that he's not quite yet there, although he's very close to Bernie, and that there are. Look, I could support. I disagree with Bernie on a number of issues. I could support. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree with Bernie on a number of issues, but overall, the core values that Bernie has are similar to my core values. So yes, I could. I do think, though, that I think it's interesting that Ben has mentioned that he's not quite yet there, although he's very close to Bernie. It's interesting that Ben. That I think it's interesting that. So yes, I could. More exposure, I think that may round out a bit of the Bernie effect.
Is he somebody you could support?
Look, I could support. I could support. I disagree with Bernie. I do think, though, that I think it's interesting that
Steve asked me, but Bernie hasn't asked me.
I appreciate that. But I guess what I'm saying, though, is that there are a lot of folks that has relationships with, that we all have relationships with. I'm not prepared to say tonight who I would support either, but I do think that this field is very crowded, very competent field. It's something that's going to be very interesting to watch.
One of the other, when you look at Sanders in any potential path to the nomination, obviously nearly won Iowa in 2016, won New Hampshire in 2016. Overall, though, if you look at all those primaries, Hillary Clinton defeated Sanders. She got 16 million votes across all the primaries. Sanders about 3 million fewer than that. It was June 14th when Clinton became the presumptive nominee. She won California, Florida, New York, a lot of the big states. Here's the interesting stat, though. While both Clinton and Sanders received almost the same share of the vote when it came to white voters, it was African-American voters where Clinton absolutely clobbered Sanders. Look at that, a 3-to-1 margin with black voters. You saw that's how she pounded him in South Carolina, across the South, states with heavy black populations. That's where she was really able to run up the score. Ben Jealous, we talked so much about this in 2016. Bernie Sanders.
Well, don't forget that Bernie won Michigan, which has a big black population.
He nearly won Michigan, but overall, you can't deny the pattern there. 75%, 23% across all primaries among black voters. Why will that be different this time around?
Then if you look at black voters under 30, if you look at black voters under 30, if you look at black voters under 30, Bernie won them. You look at black men under 50, most places, Bernie won them. The black community was getting to know Bernie Sanders. He's from Vermont. You're just like Howard Dean. You really don't know this guy. He's not where we are. That was 4 years ago. And now folks have gotten to know him. And what they see is that he's absolutely consistent on education, on health care, on the environment, on jobs. We got teachers going on strike in West Virginia. We got teachers about to go on strike in Oakland, California. There's not a teacher out there who doesn't know that when it comes to the kitchen table issues, Bernie Sanders stands with them. And so that's what makes him so powerful, is that he's terribly consistent. His brand has become much more familiar across this country, and people know that when it comes to their kitchen table issues, he's in their corner every time.
Susan, very quickly, I saw comments from the president today, Donald Trump. He clearly was trying to reopen those wounds in the Democratic Party from 2016, talking about Bernie Sanders, he says, getting a raw deal. The president there, and I imagine Republicans more broadly speaking, maybe have some hope that you'll see some of that repeat of what we had there in 2016 with Bernie and his supporters versus the rest of the party.
Well, you may, although you've got to say he lost the nomination last time. He won the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party. You may, although you've got to say he lost the nomination last time. He won the Democratic Party.
Of what you had there in 2016 with Bernie and his supporters versus the rest of the party.
Well, you may, although you've got to, although you've got to say he lost the nomination last time. He won the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has moved to the left since 2016, and the only question is how far left did they run? That's where you see the divisions.
All right, Susan Page, Joe Crowley, Ben Jealous, day one of the Bernie 2020 campaign. A lot to talk about tonight. There,
and that's where you see the divisions.
Susan Page, Joe Crowley, Ben Jealous, day one of the Bernie. Ben Jealous, day one of the Bernie 2020 campaign. A lot to talk about tonight. There will be a lot to talk about going forward. I appreciate all of you being with us tonight.
CNN's senior political analyst, David Gergen, was an advisor to 4 US presidents, both Democratic and Republican. He joins me now. David, good to see you as always. Bernie Sanders is 77 years old. If he is successful this time round in his bid for the presidency, he would be sitting in the Oval Office as an octogenarian. Is that what America needs? An advisor to 4 US presidents, both Democratic and Republican. He joins me now. David, good to see you as always. Bernie Sanders is 77.
I don't think that's what America is looking for, especially in the Democratic Party, which is now, I've been excited by younger candidates, by women getting in great numbers. The Democratic Party sees many more possibilities, but they do look to Bernie Sanders with fondness because he did support and helped create some of the ideas like Medicare for All, we just heard. And doing things for free college that have become staples for many Democratic candidates now, especially progressive or people on the left, well to the left. He's the father of a lot of this. So there's a fondness for him. I would have to say that I think the newness is what's attracting people to other candidates like Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar. At the moment, Hannah, I think that most political analysts would agree there's probably a top 3 that have emerged and who are now in the race. And one is Elizabeth Warren, one is Bernie Sanders, and the other is this newcomer from California, Kamala Harris, with fondness. Candidates, by women getting in great numbers. The Democratic Party sees many more possibilities, but they do look to Bernie Sanders with fondness because he did support and helped create some of the ideas like Medicare for All, we just heard, especially progressive. For people on the left, well to the left, he's the father of a lot of this. So there's a fondness for him. I would have to say that I think the newness is what's attracting people to other candidates like Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar. At the moment, Hannah, I think that most political analysts would agree there's probably a top 3, and he's the father of a lot of this. So there's a fondness for him. I would have to say that I think the newness candidates now, especially progressive or people on the left, well to the left. You know, he's the father of a lot of this. So there's a fondness for him, I would have to say. You know, he's the father of a lot of this. So there's a fondness for him, I would have to say that I think the newness is what's attracting people to other candidates like Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar. At the moment, Hannah, I think that most political analysts would agree. There's probably I think that most political analysts would agree. There's probably a top three that have emerged and who are now in the race. And one is Elizabeth Warren, one is Bernie Sanders, and the other is this newcomer from California, Kamala Harris. But we haven't heard from Joe Biden yet. And the way that our primary system is structured, his name recognition is going to go a long way to helping him in a very crowded field. The person who has 30% support can do very, very well.
Yeah, because when you look, David, at the field of contenders he's going to be up against, Kamala Harris, as you said,
sure.
Elizabeth Warren, I'm wondering nationwide, outside of Bernie Sanders' base appeal, how does he resonate with the youth vote, with the African-American vote, the Hispanic votes? How does that go down?
He resonates well with the youth vote just because they look at him as sort of an uncle type or grandpa figure, and they just like him. But I don't think he resonates as well, anywhere near as well, with African Americans, and frankly doesn't resonate that well with women. The Trump people would love him to be the candidate. That's the reason that the president's tweeting about him. He wants to bring him forward. He'd love to go run against Bernie Sanders, because Bernie, for all of the enthusiasm in the Democratic camp, is.
People accused Bernie Sanders last time round of having watered down the Democratic vote.
First of all, I didn't. They went head to head. She won. You know, he was entirely racist at times, but you put that behind you. That's just politics. How, you know, I don't think he'll be seen as a splitter this time. I think rather what you're going to see is one or two or three candidates pull ahead after these early primaries, and it's going to be hard for him to make that cut. I think there are a lot of people who are crowding into his lane, and seen as a splitter. This politics. How, you know. I don't think he'll be as cut. I think there are a lot of people who are crowding into his lane and may reduce the percentage of the vote. He would be so much better off if this race started with Sanders and with Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar and Joe Biden. He'd have a much better chance of that. When you got
socialism, which is the other end of the political spectrum, is what Trumpism is all about. Is socialism still, in some corners of America, still a dirty word?
Yes. Yeah, it's important to remember that America went a very different way through the 20th century from Western Europe and from Canada, say. There were strong socialist parties that developed across.
The President of the United States tried to influence an investigation that involves himself. The President denies it. We're living in locations. Do you still believe President Bush is possible? Really, I just see
we would look for somebody who can take the progressive banner and help us to rally the American people.
I think he missed his time. I wish Bernie well.
To your new day. It is Wednesday, February 20th, 8 o'clock in the East. And this morning, there is a huge report in the New York Times that raises new questions about whether President Trump
socialism.
been inside the FBI for over a decade that I never encountered a subject in an investigation who actively obstructed a case.
Right, socialism, socialism, socialism. We keep hearing it. The question is why, and what does it mean in the context of the various accusations being hurled around here? We have a CNN reality check next. Socialism would be huge, like 24.5 these days. So why, and what does it mean in the context of 2020? John Avalon has a reality check, sir. That's
right, guys.
2020. John Avalon has a reality check, sir.
That's right, guys. So we've heard a lot we've heard a lot about socialism lately.
We are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country.
And yesterday, Bernie Sanders, an actual Democratic socialist, officially got in the presidential race. Now, Team Trump sees the specter of socialism as a lifeline ahead of the 2020 elections. Fox News has been dutifully beating the drum, mentioning some variation of socialism more than 700 times in the past 5 months. Now, that dwarfs the more than 200 times the White House Council of Economic Advisors cited socialism in a recent report, or the 92 times President Trump has said the S word in public statements. All of which might cause you to ask, what exactly is socialism? Well, here's what a dictionary says. Quote, any of the various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of says, quote, any of the various economic and political theories advocating collective or governmental ownership and administration of the means of production and distribution of goods. Got it? All right, that's serious stuff. But not so great track record. After all, during the 20th century, when socialism was in fashion across much of the world, most of the countries that practiced it were economically stagnant or much worse. But in the 20 years after the end of the Cold War, the world poverty rate was cut in half. On the flip side, Venezuela's socialist state managed to almost double the poverty rate in less than 5 years. But socialism's history is easy to overlook among a generation born after the fall of the Berlin Wall. They're more likely to remember the Great Recession and growing income inequality. You can't have 400 richest Americans controlling as much wealth as the bottom 150 million without courting a backlash. So many Democrats are proposing major tax hikes on the wealthiest Americans, and some of their policies, like free college tuition, are broadly popular. Now, this may be big-time budget busting, but it's not Soviet-style socialism. Socialism's actually never been that popular in the USA. During its heyday, more than a century ago, the most successful presidential candidate on the Socialist Party ticket, Eugene Debs, never got more than 6% of the vote. And while younger voters show a willingness to consider socialism over capitalism in recent polls, they may be influenced by a lack of living memory about just how bad it was behind the Iron Curtain, as well as decades of conservatives crying wolf about socialism. For example, Bill Clinton was a pro-business centrist Democrat, but he was attacked for being a socialist for raising the top tax rate. Key portions of President Obama's health care plan, like the individual mandate and exchanges, were originally proposed by a conservative think tank. Nonetheless, it was called a socialist government takeover of health care. The attacks weren't based in fact, but they stuck. A 2010 poll found that 55% of likely voters thought Obama was a socialist. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich even subtitled one of his books, quote, Stopping Obama's Secular Socialist Machine. And who can forget the Tea Party cries to keep your government hands off my Medicare? Logic left the station a long time ago. But it's worth remembering that Medicare and Social Security were criticized as socialists when they were first proposed. They've been basically backed by Republican presidents ever since. Strengthening the social safety net is not socialism. And while far-left economic policies may end up being political kryptonite in a general election, don't believe the hype that the choice we face is between capitalism and socialism. Just doesn't fit the facts. And that's your reality check.
Very helpful, John Avalon. Thank you very much.
We aim to enlighten Alex.
You do it well. And why don't I feel like you have some Eugene Debs memorabilia around your house?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you a story. Gene, I gotta say, Mean Gene, as I like to call him. I got a lot to say.
All right, Mark Harris thought he'd be serving in Congress by now. Instead, the North Carolina Republican will be
Let's get to the breaking news from just minutes ago.
I'm Bernie Sanders. I'm running for president, and I'm asking you today, please follow an unprecedented grassroots campaign of 1 million active lobbyists in every state in our country. Our campaign is not only about being Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern history. It's not only about being the Democrat nomination and general election. Our campaign is about transforming our country and creating a government based on the principles of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice. 3 years ago, during our 2016 campaign, when we brought forth our progressive agenda, we were told our ideas were radical and they were extreme. We were told that Medicare for all, $15 an hour minimum wage, free tuition at public colleges and universities, aggressively cutting climate change, demanding the wealthy stop paying their fair share of taxes. We were told that all of these concepts were ideas that the American people would never accept. Well, by a majority of Americans.
What do you think? What do you think?
I like him. I just think he's very genuine. Mike?
Well, you know, one thing that he constantly talks about that is right there on the edge of becoming a huge issue, especially off of New York City's rejection of Amazon over in Queens. The fact that Amazon and Google, these billion-dollar companies, pay zero in taxes, pay nothing in taxes is more than offensive. More than offensive.
Thank you.
So, Robert Costa, you were embedded with Bernie in 2016. Talk about the intensity of his supporters, the size of the crowds, the amount of fundraising, the energy around him, and his plans.
Medium age.
His plan to replicate that 4 years later.
It was a movement campaign. I was covering Senator Sanders in Santa Monica, California, during the California primary when he pledged to fight on despite Secretary Clinton clinching the nomination with the delegates. You saw in Senator Sanders someone who ideologically was almost like the Barry Goldwater of the left, someone who was always a long shot, but has really shaped the Democratic Party and the way it's drifted on policy in recent years, ever since he made that long shot run for the nomination. And his movement has splintered off in some respects. There are many progressive stars in the Democratic Party, many more than there were 3 years ago. That long shot run for the nomination. Logically was almost like the Barry Goldwater of the left, someone who was always a long shot, but has really shaped the Democratic Party and the way it's drifted on policy in recent years, ever since he made that long shot run for the nomination. And his movement has splintered off in some respects. There are many progressive stars in the Democratic Party, many more than there were 3 years ago, but he still retains a strong support throughout the country, and most polls show him to be one of the most popular politicians in the country. So even at this point in his career, he has the energy, his aides tell me, to give it another run.
So Yamiche, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. He's been imitated by quite a few people in 2020, or certainly he led several people in 2020 to jump in as progressives and believe that they could win the nomination. Is that lane too crowded for Bernie Sanders now, or is his voice unique enough that he could still pull this off?
I think if you ask Bernie Sanders, he thinks he can pull this off, which is really at the crux of why you see him running, even as there are some people who say, well, this lane is going to be very crowded. I spent hundreds of days with Bernie Sanders, hearing him talk to these large crowds of people. There were times where the crowds were just emotional, crying, screaming his name. It was almost like covering a concert in some ways. People were so excited about Bernie Sanders. And I think there is an argument to make that he lost the battle but won the war for the Democratic Party, that his ideas and his policies were things that Democrats in 2020 are embracing wholeheartedly. There was always this feeling that Hillary Clinton was someone who was running a little bit more moderate because that's what you had to do to win. But the Democratic base never really said, I don't like what Bernie Sanders is talking about. I just think Hillary Clinton has a better shot at the nomination. So I think what we have now, when you have Elizabeth Warren and you have Senator Harris running on some of the same things that Bernie Sanders talked about, I think you're going to see people saying, you know what, Bernie Sanders is someone that I could stick with because he's someone who's held these ideals for a long time. I think, of course, one of his biggest challenges is going to be Elizabeth Warren, because while there are some senators who can say that they adopted these policies after Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren has thought the same things as Bernie Sanders for a very long time. And I think Bernie Sanders is out today saying you shouldn't be looking at a candidate's age or race or sexual orientation. But what we have is a Democratic Party that is also saying we want some diversity on the ticket. I talked to voters all over. Bernie Sanders is someone that I could stick with because he's someone who's held these ideals for a long time. I think, of course, one of his biggest challenges is going to be Elizabeth Warren, because while there are some senators who can say that they adopted these policies after Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren thought the same things for a very long time. And Bernie Sanders is out today saying you shouldn't be looking at a candidate's age or race or sexual orientation. But what we have is a Democratic Party that is also saying we want some diversity on the ticket. I talked to voters all over the country who say the Democratic Party shouldn't just be talking about diversity, they should have diversity. So I think that's going to be an interesting challenge for Bernie Sanders as he launches this campaign.
Well, you make the problem for Bernie
This campaign.
Well, Yamiche, the problem for Bernie as well, it seems to me, and again, he may just have the force of personality and the campaign to get past this, but he's fighting Elizabeth Warren in one part of his base. But also, you look at his weakness in 2016. Black voters supported Hillary Clinton overwhelmingly. He did not connect, in part, I suppose, because he didn't represent a lot of black voters in Vermont over the decades that he served up in Vermont, and there was a real disconnect. Any evidence that he's figured out a way to connect better in 2020?
I think it's good. I think it's good. Time will tell. Bernie Sanders, when I covered him in 2016, didn't really spend a lot of money trying to court specifically African-American voters. I remember being in South Carolina and writing stories about the fact that he hadn't even tried to get Jim Clyburn to endorse him. That was a big misstep because Hillary Clinton knew if you wanted to go into South Carolina, you needed to get Jim Clyburn on your side. So I think that what we see now is that Bernie Sanders is likely reflecting on his 2016 candidacy and saying, not only do I need to go and meet the black politicians when I come into town, but I also need to hire people that are going to have the same identities as some of the voters that I want. He had a couple African-American staffers, but I suspect that this time Bernie Sanders is going to feel a little bit more pressure to diversify his staff.
Here's Hillary Clinton talking about Bernie Sanders not doing enough to unite the party after he lost in 2016. That'll, Gene?
Yeah, Joe. You know, what can you say? You know, if there was hesitancy on the part of Bernie Sanders and a lot of his supporters, it was largely because they felt the whole process had been rigged to give the nomination to Hillary Clinton, and they weren't feeling so great about that. So, putting that aside putting that aside,
misogyny and
putting that aside, one thing we know about Bernie Sanders, one thing we know about Bernie Sanders is that he can raise a lot of money across the country from small donors, and so he's going to be in this, I think, for the long haul, because his donors are not going to abandon him, I don't think, if he loses a primary. I think they're going to stick with him, and they're going to keep giving him money. We know he can raise that kind of money, and that's a question that we're going to have about the other candidates. You know, Beto O'Rourke raised an incredible amount of money for his Senate campaign, again from small donors who wouldn't abandon him if in the case that he lost a primary. If he gets in, he could be a formidable candidate. Case that he lost a primary. If he gets in, he could be a formidable candidate who could go for the long haul as well. Question that we're going to have about the other candidates. You know, Beto O'Rourke raised what I'm saying about the other candidates. From small donors who.
Tom, you were just skeptical.
Well, let me
all around skeptical.
Yeah, let me be more curmudgeonly than Bernie Sanders for a moment and say, you know, he did raise that kind of emotion. But when I hear about, you know, people crying and the emotion at the rallies, can we please stop running candidacies that turn into cults of personality? Because this is partly the appeal of Bernie. That he gets out there and he says things that, of course, people are going to love hearing. I want to send you to college for free. I want to give you free insurance. I want corporations to pay their fair share. And then when asked, how would you do that? He says, well, you know, that we'll work that out for another day. And I think, again, there's a kind of lack of seriousness here that says, I'm just going to get into this thing. I'm going to cannonball into it with a very dramatic, personality-driven, Saturday Night Live friendly approach to this. And I think, you know, again, going back to the question about drama, I'm kind of over that. I mean, I think that was something perhaps that was needed. I think, boy, you really see Hillary Clinton being pretty bitter about that situation. But of course, as Mika pointed out, they kind of brought it on herself as well. But, you know, enough of the celebrity candidacy isn't that something very much.
You know, you just ran through several objectives, campaign objectives that Bernie always mentions that are still on the table, still on the minds of a lot of people in this country, no doubt about that. But the timing is so different this year than the timing is so different this year than it was 4 years ago, because now each of these candidates in the field, this big field and growing field of Democratic candidates, there's really only one principal objective that Democratic voters feel: beat Trump.
You can beat Trump. And by the way, that may be what Bernie has going for him. Maybe at the end of the day, Democratic voters will think that he's a guy that stands up to Trump.
Look,
who knows? We shall see.
I mean, I don't know how you have a Democratic candidate that nobody gets emotional about who can beat Trump. And we're in a very different place. And there has to be people have to be invested on a number of levels, or we're never.
I think that's true, but I think he also has to mobilize the institutional machinery of the Democratic Party.
Well, then the institutional machinery of the Democratic Party has to play fair. Maybe it will this time.
Maybe, but
maybe.
Then he should become a Democrat. Then he should become a Democrat.
Yeah, exactly. Gene, thank you. We'll be reading your new column in the Washington Post entitled, "Yes, the Green New Deal is audacious, but we have no choice. Okay, so we're TV. Okay, so we're working on positions there. A national emergency border wall. And how is advisors gave us full other options that might actually be constitutional.
Yes, thank you, Mika.
Bernie Sanders already has some bragging rights. He's been in the race for just about 1 day now, and Bernie Sanders already has some bragging rights. The Sanders campaign saying this morning, in the 24 hours since he launched his second run for the White House, he's raised $5.9 million. The campaign says that came from 225,000 donors with an average donation of $27. What does this major haul say about the Democratic primary and the 2020 race at large? Joining me right now is a former independent senator from Connecticut, the former Democratic vice presidential candidate, Joe Lieberman. It's great to see you, Senator.
You too.
Race at large. Joining me right now.
It says that notwithstanding the fact that Bernie has a lot more competition in this race than he did when he ran head-on against Hillary Clinton last time, and he's got competition on the left. He's still got an army there ready to support him. So he'd already to support him. He's still got an army there ready to support him. So you know, don't reach any conclusions that
I'm going to make
Bernie's
you reach conclusions. What do you? Yeah. What do you think it says about the Sanders campaign this time around? As you point out, it's a different time.
Right.
You've got more competition. He's not the only liberal. He's not the only one going for the young voters.
Right.
What do you think this says about Sanders in 2020?
I think it says to his opponents and anybody else watching the Democratic race, which we all should be, that don't count Bernie out. Just because he has much more competition and he's got some that looks directly in his ideological turf, Elizabeth Warren, et cetera, et cetera. Bernie he held the banner high last time, and there are a certain number of people who still feel that he's the real deal, the genuine article. So it's going to be a fascinating race, totally undecided.
One thing that we're seeing right now is, do you see this race as capitalism versus socialism? That's how Donald Trump would like to frame it. And I've also even heard some Democrats framing it that way as well.
Well, that's one of the issues that's going to be decided here. I mean, presidential nominating campaigns are really the major way in which American political parties say what they believe by who they nominate. The issue has a platform in America. Honestly, don't mean that very much. One of the issues again, versus cultural history. It's the way capitalism and socialism. So, how much power do we give to the government? Our government was founded by people who want to go away from England. They're suspicious of too strong a national government. That's our reason.
Medicare for all, a Green New Law, or that. Do you think, I mean, the big things are coming up in the primary. Medicare for all, a Green New Deal on climate change, free college tuition, and free childcare in early childhood. Do you think the eventual Democratic nominee will need to embrace those themes to win the primary?
In fact, I think the eventual Democratic nominee can sink them, not because do something about climate change or extending health care, but free tuition. You can't do all. You can't do all ultimately the taxpayers have to pay for it, and people can't pay for all this. Most of the money is still middle class. You don't want to overtax them because they're going to
That's one thing we've learned. But let me ask you: will you be endorsing anyone? Or you? I mean, you said the field's wide open right now. Will you be endorsing anyone in the Democratic?
Probably. Well, I don't know. Eventually, probably. I'm also interested that Howard Schultz is running as an independent.
You're interested in him as well?
Yeah. Last time I got elected to the Senate as an independent.
This is true.
The two-party system in America needs to be shaken up.
You don't think that by him getting in, he gets Donald Trump elected?
Not necessarily. And it depends where we are when we get into next year and the election is closer. Schultz said he wouldn't get into in a way that re-elected the president. So we'll see. But this is all very healthy. And I hope most of all it moves our country toward unity in our politics. We're not separating people into groups, but we're talking about the whole America.
I don't know if we're there yet in this current place.
Let's work at it.
Let me ask you about the current administration.
Yes.
Because
I think he missed his time. The problem.
Back. 10% said epic dragon battles. 10% said the love story between Daenerys and Jon Snow. 80% said pausing the show to try to remember who the character is because it's been 6 years since I saw them. This is the last. I feel that is running for president again. 45% said, I support him. 54% said, I think there are better candidates. Hillary Clinton said, pass the popcorn. This poll asked, are you addicted to Alexa? 10% said no. 90% said
The Democratic field of 2020. The Democratic field of 2020 candidates keeps growing, but so far, one of the biggest voices from 2016 has yet to weigh in. Jason Zengerle is a political correspondent for GQ magazine. He spent time with Bernie Sanders and says Vermont's independent senator has some unfinished business ahead of the next presidential election. And Jason joins me now. Jason, really fascinating read. Senator Sanders did not become president in 2016, of course, but he did come out on top in some ways. Many of the people who've already announced campaigns have adopted his ideas. So what does he find appealing about potentially running for president
The paper Sanders is expected to announce that he is entering the 2020 campaign. The Vermont Independent also ran for the presidency in 2016, but failed to beat Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination. Throughout the campaign, Sanders struggled to match the support Clinton received from black voters. The New York Times did better in 2020. Writes that Sanders, quote, beat Trump black voters of black race in the Democratic Party, including a potential candidate. Civil rights advocacy group, which has been advising potential presidential candidates. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, can Bernie Sanders do something differently to salvage his chances with African-American voters?
Of course he can. I mean, I think that since 2016, you've seen a lot of the country move closer to some of the policies that he was putting out that at the time seemed like bold steps that were impossible. You even have like President Obama embracing
emergency declaration. And Bernie Sanders makes an immediate splash in the 2020 race. A giant first-day fundraising haul. Now a Twitter battle with the president. A bigger campaign challenge, defending his self-styled label as a democratic socialist. Democratic socialist.
What do you think is the perfect model for him to run on, Venezuela or Cuba?
I think FDR is the best model. They called FDR a socialist for creating Social Security, and yeah, Brian, I realized we were in a depression at that time, but they also called Lyndon B. Johnson a socialist for creating Medicare. We want to empower people and not empower Wall Street.
Love it.
To begin right there with presidential politics and with new and clear evidence, Bernie Sanders was not a one-shot wonder. The Vermont senator is in a tweet war with President Trump today and hoping it only adds to his very rich opening act.
Bernie Sanders, not a one-shot own-neater.
Of the 2020 campaign. By rich, we mean nearly $6 million. That's the eye-popping number the Sanders campaign says it raised in the 24 hours after Sanders officially launched his 2020 run yesterday morning. That's a take that will get the attention of the rival Democratic campaigns. Sanders is on the president's radar for a different reason. The Trump election strategy is anchored on painting all of the Democrats as too liberal. Socialist is the president's preferred term. Morning. That's a take that will get the attention of the rival Democratic campaigns. Sanders is on the president's radar for a different reason. The Trump election strategy is anchored on painting all of the Democrats as too liberal. Socialist is the president's preferred term, and Sanders, of course, proudly describes himself as a democratic socialist. Here's the president's tweet recycling his 2016 nickname. Crazy Bernie has just entered the race. I wish him well. Senator Sanders all too happy to return fire, tweeting, quote, what's crazy is that we have a president who is a racist, a sexist, a xenophobe, and a fraud. We're going to bring people together and not only defeat Trump, but transform the economic and political life of this country. And note the very end there of that tweet, a link to the Sanders campaign page in hopes he can raise even more money. With me this day to share the reporting and their insights. Molly Ball with Time, CNN's Phil Mattingly, Tolu Oladipo, Washington Post, and Rich John with Bloomberg. Day one. No, we have Bloomberg. Day one, big day for Bernie. Some people thought crowded field this time. He had a one shot against Hillary Clinton last time. Wouldn't be as big deal this time. We don't know how this ends, but if you're Bernie Sanders, it's begun quite well.
Yeah, he obviously wanted to do a sort of shock and awe, show of force to open, because I think a lot of his rivals were discounting Bernie's chances this time around, thinking that a lot of the momentum that he got last time was produced more by his position in the race as the alternative to Hillary Clinton. But this really shows that Bernie Sanders does have a very loyal and alternative to Hillary Clinton. But this really shows that Bernie Sanders does have a very loyal and active fan base that still wants it to be him. Doesn't want a stand-in Bernie Sanders type. Doesn't want another, progressive who just isn't Bernie.
And that's not true at all. I'll vote for someone who isn't Bernie Sanders so long as they are a true progressive, not someone that's saying that they're progressive right now. Because that's where the party is. I want someone who's being truthful about it. And Bernie and Warren seem to be the only two truthful ones about them.
Want another, progressive ideas. He's not a political figure, and yet for his followers, it really isn't about which Democrat embodies these progressive ideas.
Yes, it is.
It's specifically Bernie Sanders.
Well, I was just going to say, because to be clear, the Democratic field now has covered Bernie for a long period of time.
Major structural problems with the Bernie Sanders campaign.
In the 2016 campaign has gravitated towards his policy proposals, which were considered out of the mainstream and kind of pushed aside by Clinton supporters as something that's not electable if you're backing that. Well, now those are the proposals that the vast majority of Democrats in the field are actually. 2016 campaign has gravitated towards his policy proposals, which were considered out.
Specifically, Bernie Sanders.
Well, I was just going to say, because to be clear, the Democratic field now has covered Bernie for a long period of time. In the 2016 campaign has gravitated towards his policy proposals, which were considered out of the mainstream and kind of pushed aside by Clinton supporters as something that's not electable if you're backing that. Well, now those are the proposals that the vast majority of Democrats in the field are actually taking, and the fact that the OG can still raise all of the money here, and it's not just the top line figure. Look, we all knew he had a massive email list, and that can actually immediately get returns. The thing that I was struck by more than the 200,000 donors, the $6 million top line, $600,000 in recurring donations per month based on the way people are signing up. This base is not going anywhere soon. I don't think there's ever a question whether or not Bernie Sanders was going to have money and the money to compete, but it's very clear he's probably going to have the most money and the most money to compete. Whether or not he's able to break through, given all the people who are kind of sharing or co-opting a lot of his ideas, remains an open question. But to your point, this is the way any candidate would want to start any primary campaign.
He said so much, and all the topics just weave into each other. It's hard to break them up.
A long way to go, but who gets a little nervous by that? Is it Elizabeth Warren, who's probably closest to him in terms of ideas and trying to take the progressive wing of the party? Is it Kamala Harris, who thought, hey, I had a great rollout, I raised about $1.5 million? Wow, that's a lot of cash. Kamala Harris, who thought, hey, I had a great rollout, I raised about $1.5 million. Wow, that's a lot. Wow. $1.5. Wow. Wow, that's a lot of cash.
I think it's all of those candidates who are running as progressives who are saying, I support Medicare for all, I support a Green New Deal, because Bernie Sanders, his supporters, his campaign are going to say, well, welcome to the party. I've been saying that we need to do this for decades. And that's why I think that Bernie Sanders still has this strong base of supporters who don't, if you look at the fundraising numbers, I think it works out to about $27, which was sort of his supporters who don't, if you look at the fundraising numbers, I think it works out to about $27, which was sort of his average donation rallying cry. Like, his supporters are with him because he's been on this for a long time.
Correct.
$27. You remember it all too well, right? $27. $27. Hey, it worked. It worked. Some of us rolled our eyes at all those emails from Bernie saying $27, but it worked. Socialist in presidential politics. Candidates would pull back from that. Bernie Sanders seems to think, fine, you come after me, throw your socialist label at me, call me crazy Bernie, let's do this.
Yeah, and this is something that the White House is very much willing to engage in as well, because they want to brand the entire field of Democrats as socialists. We've heard that language from the president over the past few weeks, and from his ecosphere of Republicans on Capitol Hill and in the media, branding basically anybody who has a D next to their name as a socialist. Now you have Bernie Sanders, who proudly wears that label of Democratic socialist, and he's seeing all the fire coming from the White House and seeing that they want to brand not only his policies as socialism, but also all the Democrats' policies as socialism. So he's willing to really fight back against the president. And one poll that came out last year showed that S word is not as toxic as it used to be. He's willing to really fight back against the president. And one poll that came out last year showed that that S word is not as toxic as it used to be. Democrats actually view socialism as more favorable than capitalism, according to this poll that came out last year.
And that's going to be one of the fascinating questions in the campaign, because some of the other candidates get a little nervous. Because if you look back historically, you don't want to be called the Democratic Socialist in presidential politics in the United States of America. Bernie Sanders, so listen to him, he's quite comfortable with this. He was the mayor of Burlington, he was a socialist, now he's an independent, even though he's running for the Democratic nomination. He doesn't mind the label. When you throw it on him, he has a good retort.
When I talk about democratic socialism, somebody wants to call me a radical. Okay, here it is. I believe that people are inherently entitled to health. I believe people are entitled to
he's comfortable with it. There's a flip side. You ask some of the other candidates, and you get this.
to compete in New Hampshire. Do you have to, in the Democratic primary, get more work?
Why does she always laugh? She always laughs with her answers. Why is everything so funny?
Well, the people of New Hampshire will tell me what's required to compete in New Hampshire, but I will tell you I am not a Democratic Socialist.
Part of the fast.
She's not a Democratic Socialist.
In a real sense, I don't even know what it means. I guess that's my point. The word has lost its meaning.
If we want to beat Trump, we should not put up a candidate who embraces socialism.
It's going to be a fascinating Democratic debate. There's just 3 of the candidates there. There will be 8 or 10 or maybe 12 Sanders rivals. And again, he's comfortable in his skin. That's what he's called himself forever. And he's very quick. And his supporters are very quick, those who've been around his campaign. 8 or 10 or maybe 12 Sanders rivals. And again, he's comfortable in his skin. That's what he's called himself forever. And he's very quick. And his supporters are very quick, those who've been around his campaign. Did you saw the Chuck Rocha on Fox News saying, "Well, no, it's like LBJ," or but the other candidates cringe. Should they? Is that the right reaction?
Well, it's also kind of an opportunity for them, right? I mean, when even Elizabeth Warren can go out there and say, I am a capitalist, it gives them a chance to differentiate themselves from what they view as the left flank of the party, even if they're advocating pretty much the same policies, just by disassociating themselves with that label. So the question is, do Democratic primary voters find that label so inherently appealing that they're not looking for the candidates, who are differentiating themselves with the left flank? They're looking for that left flank, and that is the position that Bernie seems to be in right now, is with a very powerful appeal to a strong for the left flank. They're looking for that left flank, and that is the position that Bernie seems to be in right now, is with a very powerful appeal to a strong and active part of the party base. Is it the whole party base? You hear Democratic the party base. Is it the whole party base? You hear Democratic strategists, a lot of them will question whether he's got a ceiling, particularly in a multi-way Democratic primary. If his appeal, while very, very strong, is still limited to that narrow swath of voters. But we're going to have to see. It certainly was wider than a lot of people expected in 2016. Than a lot of people expected in 2016.
And that is part of my big question, in the sense that Bernie himself, and all politicians say this, and there's ego involved in politics, shocking, and there's gambling in the casino. They say it's about the ideas, not about them. But this will be a test of how much of this is personal loyalty to Bernie Sanders that carries over from the last campaign.
Right, because you talk to a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, and they do feel like he maybe not got robbed, but that the 2016 primary process was unfair. And there was polling that showed that Bernie Sanders polled better against Donald Trump. And there was polling in there. And And there was polling that showed that Bernie Sanders polled better against Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton did. And so, the mantra like Bernie would have won comes into play. And Sanders has also said this is about continuing the political revolution that started in 2016. And that means not just getting through the primary and elevating these ideas, but actually winning the general election.
Can I say also, I think it's also about authenticity, that he's willing to I think it's also about authenticity, that he's willing to embrace that label, that he's not afraid of the attacks that the Republicans will throw at someone who calls himself a socialist, and I think that's powerfully appealing to people that he knows what he is.
And having, A, he's comfortable in his skin, B, he's been around the presidential track, which sometimes experience helps on the campaign trail. We shall see. It's a fascinating start. We'll see how it goes. Up next, the New York Times reveals new episodes showing how the president allegedly attempted to
Okay, so now that I have all my favorites, it's time to start working with keywords. Oh gosh, I gotta remember how to do this. I can mark each network. Seem to be the main topics that they talk about. I can use these as keywords. Oh boy.
But the policies of the Democratic but the policies of the Democratic Party, the ones that we've seen so far in the candidates, seem to be progressing more and more to the left. But the policy.
Okay, well, it's CNN. One keyword. Policies. Let's put that as social.
Is using the word socialism, which, as you know, is a bad word, has been a bad word in America, to try and scare voters and say you vote for Democrats, they're going to take away your money.
Right, but Kamala Harris, to the left, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, so far left.
Grandfather of the left.
Absolutely. Cory Booker, on the left-ish.
On the left-ish.
Bernie Sanders, so far left.
Grandfather of the left.
Just
Bernie.
Well, a lot of Democratic voters, particularly the millennials you were just talking about, are with those policies. And socialism is not a dirty word to a lot of younger voters in this country. There have been polls taken on it. And they believe that in order to win, they have to appeal to those young voters, and then they will move to the middle. Don't forget, in the primaries, you say a lot of things in this country because you want to win, but then you tack one way, and then you move back to the middle. If you're a Republican, you tack to the right, and then you move. It's not.
Political news. Senator Bernie Sanders announcing just moments ago that he's running for president again. His challenge to Hillary Clinton fell short in 2016, and the field for the Democratic nomination much more crowded this time around. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran has the latest. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back, and you'll remember, George, the last time Bernie Sanders ran for president, when he announced, hardly anybody noticed, and then he ignited that astonishing grassroots movement that made him the most unlikely political change. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back, and you'll remember 77 years old.
His improbable run in 2016 gives him an edge in name recognition for 2020. He started that race as a little-known independent senator from Vermont.
I know that if I do this, I start off as a significant underdog.
But his progressive platform, universal Medicare for all healthcare, free tuition at state colleges and universities, $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, caught fire as thousands flocked to his rallies hoping to feel the burn.
Welcome to the political revolution.
Sanders.
That breaking political news, Senator Bernie Sanders announcing just moments ago that he's running for president again. His challenge to Hillary Clinton fell short in 2016, and the field for the Democratic nomination much more crowded this time around. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran has the latest. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back. And you'll remember, George, the last time Bernie Sanders ran for president, when he announced, hardly anybody noticed. And then he ignited that astonishing grassroots movement that made him the most unlikely political rock star and changed the Democratic Party, shifting it decisively leftward. But now the question is, at 77 years old, can Bernie bottle that lightning again? Yes, it's official. Bernie's back. And you'll remember
That breaking political news, Senator Bernie Sanders announcing just moments ago that he's running for president again. His challenge to Hillary Clinton fell short in 2016, and the field for the Democratic nomination much more crowded this time around. Our senior national correspondent Terry Moran has the latest. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, George. Yes, it's official. Bernie's back. And you'll remember, George, the last time Bernie Sanders ran for president, when he announced, hardly anybody noticed. And then he ignited that astonishing grassroots movement that made him the most unlikely political rock star and changed the Democratic Party, shifting it decisively leftward. But now the question is, at 77 years old, can Bernie bottle that lightning again?
His improbable run in 2016 gives him an edge in name recognition for 2020. He started that race as a little-known independent senator from Vermont.
I know that if I do this, I start off as a significant underdog.
But his progressive platform, universal Medicare for all health care, free tuition at state colleges and universities, $1 trillion in infrastructure, spending caught fire as thousands flocked to rallies hoping to feel the burn.
Welcome to the political revolution.
Sanders struggled to win African-American voters in states like South Carolina, and he ultimately conceded to Hillary Clinton at the Democratic National Convention.
I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the nominee of the Democratic Party for President of the United States.
But in a crowded 2020 field, early polls show Bernie Sanders near the top of the contenders.
Now, Bernie Sanders begins this campaign dealing with an issue from the last one. Sanders has now twice apologized to women, having ignited this progressive movement in the Democratic Party. Can he now take advantage of it, take it all the way, and win?
Yeah, because so many other candidates also have his ideas right now. Okay, Terry, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. George Steph.
A little All right, breaking news. Thought this was going to happen at 7.
Yeah.
A little earlier, Bernie Sanders jumping back into the presidential race again. He is running officially.
I tell you what, this is Act 2.
Act 2.
And it's going to be fascinating because...
Okay, so yes, socialism, I'm going to use the keyword to represent all... when they talk about socialism and when they talk about just the topics that they're covering. So I'll know that. And yeah, they talked about polls, so that's going to have to be a new keyword.
Sanders jumping back into the presidential race again. He is running officially.
I tell you what, this is Act 2.
Act 2.
And it's going to be fascinating because as everybody remembers, 3 years ago, Bernie Sanders energized the Democratic Party. And
young people.
Energized so many young people. He had an extraordinary fundraising base online and also had an extraordinary grassroots operation. He was fighting uphill most of the time because the Democratic Party establishment was all on board with Hillary Clinton. And as some people suggested, parts of the process at times appeared to be skewed towards Hillary Clinton. Or if you ever saw The Matrix, he was like Neo against the machine. Like he was the outsider versus the establishment. Now he had himself. He was right.
Joe.
And he
was right.
What? That it was rigged?
That it was rigged.
Yeah.
That's all establishments.
It's going to be fascinating because, as everybody remembers, it's going to be a different run, a tougher run for Bernie this time.
It's going to be a much tougher run for him. It's a wide and diverse and deep field.
How crowded it was.
I think Bernie's time, sadly for Bernie and the Bernie files.
Be careful.
I would be careful. You know why?
Might be in the rearview mirror.
I just wonder who temperamentally, of that group that we just saw up on the screen, who temperamentally, like it or not, whether you want to see it or not, can stand up to Trump. Because that's ultimately what Democrats are looking for, correct?
That's the bottom line.
Someone who can beat.
Well, everybody cares about ideology until the first time that candidate grabs a microphone, starts talking, and she or he owns the room. Then forget about ideology. It becomes about leadership. Maybe that's Bernie's path.
Maybe. Look, Bernie comes in with a base. I mean, he comes.
Maybe look, Bernie comes in with a base. I mean, he already has a base. He's run nationwide. He's got people out there in every state who are going to be back on the Bernie train. But as was said, this is a much different year. And
you're a different year.
What's interesting is that Bernie, again, was a guy that after the election was over, you had people saying that voted for Donald Trump, well, I would have voted for Bernie.
That's correct.
If
it hadn't been rigged against him for the DNC
nominee, which again proves it's like those people who voted for Obama 2 times, George W. Bush 2 times, and then voted for Donald Trump. It's not about ideology, and Bernie does speak to a lot of disaffected people, especially across the upper Midwest. Let me see.
I want to know what Mika wrote down on that piece of paper. Which 2 candidates did she write down? And how do we know that when they actually say anything, that's the same piece of paper? This is just Bernie's interview. That's not the type of video I'm making. I'm trying to keep it specifically to talking heads about Bernie. This is... Should I label this ABC or should I label this The View? I guess I'll have ABC represent ABC News. And I'll make this ABC. See. What are they talking about in this clip?
Once again, Senator Bernie Sanders announced he's running for president. Watch.
It is absolutely imperative.
There you laugh. Don't you?
Bernie claims that all of the issues he pushed about health care and taxes that were considered so radical during the last campaign have now gained mainstream acceptance. Is he right?
I don't think he's wrong about that, actually.
No.
Maybe this is... I actually wish that Trump went against Bernie Sanders. I think that would have been a far more interesting...
Why do that? She asked, is he right? And he then said, I don't think he's wrong about it. So just say, yes, I think he's right. Why did you have to make that answer so complicated? Is he right about it? Say yes.
The last campaign have now gained mainstream acceptance. Is he right?
I don't think he's wrong about that, actually.
No.
I don't think he's wrong about that, actually. So you think he's right? That's what she asked.
No.
Maybe
what a joke.
This is... I actually wish Trump was leading towards this movement. I don't know. I don't think he's wrong about that. I think the left has really moved more in his direction than...
You're goddamn right.
I don't know that, you know, policies like raising the minimum wage, universal health care, I don't know that those are really that left. I think when you poll the American...
They want it.
Yeah, when you poll Americans, they want that. And I, too, think that health care...
I assume... This tweet here, they're being sarcastic. Bernie, didn't you learn anything from the 2016 election? This is a 2-party country. Don't mess the waters again. Hey, Jude, I mean, come on, that's got to be Beatles inspired. So that sounds like someone that would be into Bernie. So they're probably just being, yeah, they're being sarcastic here. Because someone with a Beatles type title, I think, would support Bernie. Who knows?
I think that health care should be a right. I think when you get ill, you know, you need to be taken care of. Don't we want that in our society? We're actually one of the only countries that...
They're applauding the topic. That's good.
I think
the
it's
thing
just
I will
human.
say about him is don't underestimate him. I mean, he got 60% New Hampshire in 2016, 49% in Iowa. This time, there are no superdelegates to come against him at the convention like what happened before. The DNC that we know of so far isn't petitioning against him. Like there was a huge scandal with Debbie Wasserman Schultz that they seemed in the tank for Hillary Clinton. So he already has that going for him.
Debbie Wasserman. Why do you have to remind me? Get those commas out of there.
So I think he's a truly formidable candidate. I wouldn't underestimate him. He's the most powerful, he's the most popular politician in the country right now.
The only problem...
Oh, those could be the same clip, but whatever.
Why is it that when I was in college, I paid $75 this term? Why is that? I went to city universities. I got a master's degree.
Wait, so what's this clip right here? Oh. This is nothing. It's not nothing. It's not something that I'm going with. That would make a good cover though. Let me just get this one little what the heck? Stop it. There we go. Get got a thumbnail of something. Whoop. Okay. Okay. CBC, Canadian broadcast. All right.
This morning as well, we watch Washington, where U.S. President Donald Trump is facing another potential challenger this morning in the 2020 presidential election. Bernie Sanders has announced he will once again run for the Democratic nomination.
You're goddamn right. Oops.
We were wondering whether he would join in this already crowded field. Tell us about his announcement, Lindsay.
You know, I think it's fitting that this is my first live report about the Democratic 2020.
Oh boy, there's going to be a lot to talk about. She said a whole lot of stuff. I didn't feel like dividing it up into multiple little favorites. Oh boy, okay.
A campaign for the nomination, because so much of what all of these candidates are talking about in the lead up to this is the kind of thing that Bernie Sanders ran on the last time. And if you look at his campaign video that came out this morning, that's what he's running on. He's running on being the guy who started to move the conversation, not just among Democrats, but in this country, to the left. That video has headlines and news clips about Medicare for all, which seemed like a radical idea 4 years ago, about free tuition, which seemed again like an incredibly radical idea, and talking about the emergency of climate change. If you look at the Democratic race right now, those kinds of conversations and policies moving in that direction are really the price of entry for being considered to be the candidate. And because Bernie Sanders is the person who put these ideas forward in that campaign in 2016, he believes he will be the right person to challenge Donald Trump in 2020.
That's right.
So he's aware that it's a very different field of competition. We remember how he outflanked Hillary Clinton widely on the left, but this time around, not so much.
No, the candidates all have sort of variations on a theme, and the questions are, you know, to what degree are they going to be more progressive? And the big difference that you have with the candidates as they are coming out now is what Bernie Sanders cannot change, who he is, a 77-year-old white man running up against a really diverse field of candidates. Just check out the women who have declared they are running for the nomination. And if you look at what happened in the 2018 election, it was women.
Oh wait, he's not talking about age here?
Who he is, a 77.
I think if I'm gonna start to show any negative stuff to open up the video, though I did last time, it'll be about age, because that seems to be what everyone's talking about, so I'm gonna grab that.
Who wow is what Bernie Sanders cannot change. Who he is, a 77-year-old white man running up against a really diverse field of candidates. Just check out the women who have declared they are running for the nomination.
Over? What? Oh,
The big difference that you have with the candidates as they are coming out now is what Bernie Sanders cannot change.
How long have I been editing for now? Oh, hour and 53 minutes or so. Alright, so I'll finish in like 2 hours, edit like the 2-hour mark. Alright, so this is Tonight Show, NBC. I guess I'll do joke, because I was wondering if I would put a couple of these in here. Announce. Look at how she looks at him. Aww. My turn? Yes, my turn.
My turn. An independent senator.
Aww. Alright, so NBC joke announce also. Can't I get that second N? There we go.
Senator Bernie Sanders announced today that he will run for president in 2020. If successful, yeah. If successful, he would be the oldest person.
Age, of course.
That's it.
Well, if that's the worst you got on him. Oh, here we go again. NBC. Joke. Announce. Age. I already know what you're gonna say. I remember. Oh, whoa. What does he say here?
But within hours, his campaign raised more than $1 million.
Ooh.
Bernie actually brought in so much money that he spent the rest of the day attacking himself.
What? I had a. Oh, funds. That's what I was calling funds. Gotta keep it the same, because if I search for funds next time to find other funds, if I'm working on this clip, and I'm like, oh, funds, yeah, I want to find more stuff about funds, then this wouldn't have shown up, because it said money, so I gotta make sure to keep the same thing. Why is that in my head?
Today, Bernie Sanders said he is in for 2020. He becomes the 10th candidate in the Democratic field. Sanders, who challenged Hillary Clinton in 2016, is the only candidate calling himself a Democratic socialist. And his entry stirs new discussion about whether the country is heading his way
or the highway.
Here's Nancy Cordes.
He's picking up where he left off 3 years ago.
Revolutions do not happen overnight.
Within 4 hours, he had already raised $1 million, a reminder of the progressive groundswell that drove him to 23 caucus and primary victories in 2016.
I'm talking about a huge.
Sanders is 77, but told Dickerson that should not be an issue. And he noted that some 90-year-olds have more energy, Jeff, than people half their age.
Oh, okay, Nancy Cordes, thank you very much.
Okay, if you say so, Nancy. That's exactly right, Nancy. You're so smart.
That's exactly right, CBS.
That's exactly right.
Don't age. As many people say, age is just a number.
That's right.
Age
That's
is
right.
just a number.
And he certainly is out there campaigning quite a lot.
You're goddamn right. Steve Kornacki. Get out of here. Duh. Duh. That's the face he's making there. Duh. Duh. To be fair, when you're in video, there's no still frame that you can pause on that's actually flattering. You're all.
The senator announced his 2020 news early this morning in an email to supporters.
Copy this so I don't have to type it every time.
Sanders now joins an already crowded and diverse field of 10 Democratic.
Yeah.
Sanders, running second in the polls right now behind Joe Biden, remains a force to be reckoned with, though. Within hours of his announcement, he raised more than $3 million from donors.
He's going to be a real force. He's exactly where the voters are on health, on education, on jobs. And he's showing that he can raise real money and, frankly, do it from the people of the country in probably the smallest denominations of anybody. So I think everybody should take it very, very seriously this time.
All right. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of help from some of his rivals in your own campaign.
That face.
He is absolutely formidable, and it starts with his message. What makes Bernie unique is that he has been courageous on these issues for a very long time, and quite frankly, you've seen, I think, candidates across the party move towards him. He clearly is where the voters are.
All right. Well, Susan,
he's talking about science. That's more about like his authenticity. Did I make that a word? I haven't checked. I wasn't. Whatever. I'll just put it down.
Well, you know, it's possible, and he starts out with a base of support. He starts out with phenomenal fundraising ability. But, you know, one thing that strikes me, Republicans often choose the person who came in second in the previous election.
Usually. Well, Trump didn't come in second last election, so.
I think Democrats like to fall in love with somebody new, and that is not going to be Bernie Sanders this time. This is going to be one of the 10 other people who have not run for office before, who are a generation younger than Bernie Sanders and who espouse pretty similar political views.
That can go on the front of the video if I start negative.
Bernie is formidable. There's no question about it. Bernie has you saw with the numbers that he's raised just in a few hours, the millions of dollars of grassroots that he has out there. I think maybe even more so with all these Democrats running, it kind of is going to stand out that Bernie is still an independent.
And that's a bad thing because?
I could support, I disagree with Bernie on a number of issues, but overall, the core values that Bernie has are similar to my core values. So, yes, I could.
I should call that like endorsement. All right, well, we're at the... So yeah, if you're just tuning in, I've been just doing what I do to make these videos. I'm not trying to make this video exciting, I'm just showing it as it is. Downloading videos from the internet, going through them with a fine-tooth comb, finding clips that work out of the video that I downloaded. That's what this represents. Each little yellow bar here represents the clip that I favorited, the piece from the video that I downloaded. So of this clip, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can even see the green. Because not only was it selected, it was made a favorite. It could have been marked as a reject, which then this green would be red. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 pieces from this clip that I've marked as favorites. Oh. Does that match up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes, it does. And just going through, that's how I'm gonna do it. Alright. Thank you for watching. We'll see how this continues. I gotta switch over to my broadcaster and hit stop, because the key commands don't do it, so I gotta be ugly about it and go over to this and then hit stop. Alright.